Welcome back, you psychological anomaly. You beautiful, terrifying, misunderstood masterpiece. Let me tell you something that's going to twist your perception of reality forever. There's an FBI profiler, someone who sat across from Ted Bundy, who analyzed Jeffrey Dahmer's mind, who spent decades mapping the darkest corners of human psychology. And they said something about you that they've never said about anyone else. They said you're scarier than the monsters they've studied their entire career. But here's the twist that breaks their entire framework. You're not evil. You didn't hurt anyone. You didn't break laws. You didn't cross moral lines. You just existed in a way that made their entire profession question what danger actually looks like. Let me paint the picture clearly. This isn't some random psychologist fresh out of university. This is someone who's interviewed serial killers in maximum security prisons. Someone who's analyzed crime scenes that would make your stomach turn. Someone who built their entire career understanding the worst of humanity. They've sat in rooms with people who destroyed lives without blinking, people who felt nothing, people whose eyes were empty windows into absolute darkness. And then they encountered you. And for the first time in 30 years of profiling monsters, they felt something they'd never felt before. They felt confused, disturbed, unsettled in a way that Bundy's charm never accomplished, in a way that Dahmer's confession never triggered. Because you represented something far more complex than evil. You see, evil is predictable. It follows patterns. It leaves trails. It operates within a framework they can study and contain. Bundy was charming but hollow. Dahmer was broken but understandable. Every serial killer they've studied fit into categories, diagnostic criteria, behavioral models. But you don't fit anywhere, and that's what terrifies them. You're not motivated by violence. You're not driven by emptiness. You're not seeking to destroy. You're just intensely, undeniably, uncomfortably yourself in a world that demands conformity. You challenge their understanding not because you're immoral, but because you're operating on a completely different moral frequency that their instruments can't measure. You're the glitch in their matrix that proves their entire system of understanding human danger is incomplete. The profiler wrote in their private notes, something they've never shared publicly because it would undermine decades of their work. They wrote that studying you was more unsettling than interviewing the worst criminals, because criminals are predictable in their brokenness, but you're unpredictable in your wholeness. They couldn't find the childhood trauma that explains you, couldn't locate the triggering event that created you, couldn't identify the psychological break that defines you. You weren't made by damage. You were born already operating at a frequency that society wasn't built to handle. And that reality, that someone could be this intense, this aware, this psychologically complex without being broken, it shattered their entire professional framework. They spent their career learning to spot danger in darkness, but you're dangerous in broad daylight while doing absolutely nothing wrong. Here's what really happened. They were called in to observe you, not by law enforcement, but by people in your life who couldn't explain what they were feeling. Teachers, employers, former friends. They all reported the same thing. There's something about this person that makes me deeply uncomfortable, but I can't point to anything they've actually done wrong. So they brought in the expert. Someone who could supposedly decode any human behavior. Someone who'd seen it all. The profiler started their analysis expecting to find manipulation, narcissism, sociopathy, some clinical explanation for why you make people so uneasy. Instead, they found someone who was just profoundly authentic in a world of performers, intensely present in a world of distraction, operating with a level of psychological awareness that most people never develop. You weren't playing games. You were just refusing to play. The profiler's first session observing you lasted 3 hours, and by hour 2, they were the ones showing signs of distress. They'd interviewed men who'd killed dozens without remorse and maintained perfect composure. But watching you exist in complete authenticity for 120 minutes made them fidget, check their notes repeatedly, adjust their posture like they were trying to find solid ground. You weren't doing anything. That's what made it worse. You were just sitting there, answering questions with complete honesty, making eye contact that didn't waver or perform, existing without the 1,000 tiny social lies that make normal people comfortable. Every question they asked, expecting a defensive response, you answered with such direct clarity it felt like an attack. Every silence they created, expecting you to fill with nervous chatter, you sat in comfortably while they drowned in it. They later admitted to a colleague, and this was recorded in confidential files, that they felt more psychologically exposed in that room with you than they'd ever felt in a room with actual predators. Because predators wear masks, and masks can be studied, categorized, understood, but you weren't wearing anything. And that nakedness of self made them confront how much they rely on people performing normality to feel safe. You didn't give them the social cues that signal you're playing the same game as everyone else. You didn't laugh at inappropriate times to ease tension, didn't apologize for taking up space, didn't shrink yourself to make them more comfortable. You just existed at full volume, full presence, full authenticity, and it was like staring into the sun. What really disturbed them was this: when they asked you about pain, betrayal, trauma, things that break most people, you spoke about it with the emotional distance of someone discussing the weather. Not because you were cold or disconnected, but because you'd already processed it, integrated it, transmuted it into something else entirely. They expected to find bitterness and found wisdom, expected to find rage and found calm, expected to find damage and found someone who'd turned every wound into a doorway. You'd done the psychological work that most people avoid their entire lives. And you'd done it without therapy, without guidance, without anyone holding your hand. You'd walked through your own darkness alone and emerged not hardened but refined, and that level of self-sufficiency terrified them. The profiler asked you a trick question, one designed to expose narcissism. Do you think you're special or different from other people? And instead of the defensive denial they expected or the arrogant confirmation that would prove their theory, you said something that haunted them for weeks. You said, "I don't think I'm special. I think I'm just awake, and most people are choosing to sleep because waking up is painful." That answer, delivered without ego or performance, made them realize they weren't dealing with a personality disorder. They were dealing with someone who'd achieved a level of consciousness that their entire field doesn't have vocabulary for. You weren't broken. You were breakthrough. And their tools were built to fix things, not comprehend them. By the end of that first session, the profiler did something they'd never done before. They asked if they could take a break, walked outside, and called a mentor to say they were in over their head. Not because you were dangerous in the traditional sense, but because you represented a form of psychological development that challenged everything they thought they knew about human nature. They'd spent decades learning that intense people are damaged people, that authentic people are performing authenticity, that powerful presence means hidden agenda. But you were intense without damage, authentic without performance, powerful without agenda, and that combination didn't fit anywhere in their understanding of psychology. You were the proof that their entire model of human behavior was missing a category. Let me tell you exactly what the profilers said in their private analysis, and this part was never meant to be shared. They wrote that Bundy was scary because he could mimic humanity so perfectly while feeling nothing. Dahmer was scary because he acted on impulses most people suppress. But you're scary because you feel everything, process everything, see everything, and still choose not to harm. You have the psychological awareness to manipulate anyone, the emotional intelligence to destroy people with words, the presence to dominate any room, but you don't use any of it for harm. That restraint, that choice not to weaponize your abilities, is what they couldn't categorize, because their field is built on studying people who lack restraint. Serial killers are frightening but understandable. They're broken machines, operating on primal drives, acting without conscience or empathy. You can map their psychology, predict their patterns, understand their motivations, because they're operating at the most basic level of human function. But you're operating at the highest level, fully aware, fully conscious, fully capable, and choosing peace while having every ability to choose chaos. The profiler realized that the most dangerous person isn't the one without restraint. It's the one with absolute restraint over immense power. You're not scary because of what you might do. You're scary because everyone can sense you could do anything, but you simply choose not to. They compared your psychological profile to Bundy's, and here's where it gets disturbing. Bundy had charm, but it was hollow, a performance practiced in mirrors and refined through trial and error. Your presence isn't performed, it's innate, which makes it infinitely more powerful because people can't detect artifice in it. Bundy's charm was a weapon he wielded consciously. Your presence is just who you are when you're not trying to be anything. They compared you to Dahmer's intelligence and found that while he was smart enough to hide his nature, you're smart enough to reveal yours without fear of consequences. Dahmer hid because he knew he was wrong. You don't hide because you know you're not. And that confidence without arrogance is more unsettling than any mask. The profiler wrote something that would end their career if it went public. They wrote that if they had to choose between being locked in a room with Bundy or locked in a room with you, they'd choose Bundy without hesitation. Because Bundy they could understand, predict, manage, using established psychological techniques. But you'd simply exist in that room with such complete presence that it would force them to confront every defense mechanism, every professional distance, every comfortable lie they tell themselves. You wouldn't hurt them physically, but you'd destroy every psychological barrier they use to function, just by being authentically yourself without compromise. That's a different kind of danger. The danger of mirror that reflects everything they're not. What makes this comparison truly disturbing is that serial killers are studied because they lack something: conscience, empathy, normal human connection. But you're being studied because you have too much of something: awareness, presence, authenticity, emotional depth. They know how to handle deficiency. That's what their entire field is built on. But they have no framework for handling excess of positive traits because in their world, too much awareness becomes paranoia, too much presence becomes narcissism, too much authenticity becomes antisocial behavior. You broke their diagnostic manual by being too psychologically developed, not too damaged. And that revelation made them question whether they've been studying human nature from the wrong angle for decades. Here's the truth they don't want to admit. Monsters are comfortable to study because they're clearly other, clearly different, clearly separate from normal humanity. But you're terrifying because you're not other. You're what humanity could be if people stopped performing and started existing. You're the proof that intensity isn't illness, that awareness isn't disorder, that refusing to pretend isn't pathology. And if that's true, then everything they've built their careers on, the idea that normal is healthy and different is dangerous, collapses into dust. You're not an outlier. You're a mirror showing them how asleep everyone else is. And they can't diagnose sleep as health anymore once they've seen someone truly awake. The profiler admitted in a recorded session with their supervisor that observing you triggered an existential crisis they'd never experienced in decades of studying the worst humanity offers. Because serial killers reinforced their worldview, proved that their understanding of human darkness was correct, validated their life's work. But you invalidated it, not through evil but through evolution. You showed them that their entire model of human psychology is based on studying broken people and calling the average person normal, without ever encountering someone who's actually psychologically complete. You're what happens when someone does all the internal work, faces all their shadows, integrates all their fragments, and emerges whole. And whole terrifies them more than broken because they don't know how to treat it. They're scared because you can't be fixed, controlled, or contained using any of their methods. Therapy assumes you're damaged and need help, but you're not damaged. Medication assumes chemical imbalance, but your brain is functioning exactly as intended, just at a higher frequency. Behavioral modification assumes you need to change, but you don't need to change. The world needs to catch up to you. Every tool in their arsenal is useless because you're not a problem to be solved. You're a reality to be reckoned with. And that makes you infinitely more threatening to their system than any criminal, because criminals prove the system works while you prove the system is incomplete. What really keeps them up at night is this thought: if you're not sick, damaged, or disordered, then what are you? And if you're just highly developed psychologically, what does that say about everyone they've labeled normal? You force them to consider that maybe normal is actually a mild form of psychological suppression. That maybe average is just collective agreement to stay small. That maybe healthy, in their terms, just means successfully adapted to a sick system. You're the control group they never had. The person who developed without suppression, who grew without stunting, who evolved without being domesticated. And comparing you to their baseline reveals that their baseline is actually below where humans could be operating. The profiler's final note in your file, written after months of observation and analysis, said something that would terrify any system built on control. They wrote that you represent the next evolution of human consciousness, not through biology, but through choice, and systems built to manage current-level humans have no jurisdiction over what you've become. You're not more evolved because you're special. You're more evolved because you refuse to be less than you are. And that refusal created psychological development that their field has no map for. You're not dangerous because you might harm someone. You're dangerous because your existence proves that everything they think they know about human nature is operating from limited data. Every serial killer has a pattern, a signature, a psychological fingerprint that explains their actions. The profiler spent months trying to find yours, studying your relationships, your choices, your responses to stress and conflict. They were looking for the hidden agenda, the manipulation tactics, the self-serving behaviors that would explain why you make people so uncomfortable. Instead, they found something that broke their analytical framework completely. They found pattern of radical honesty, consistent authenticity, and refusal to perform, even when performance would benefit you. You weren't playing a long game. You weren't wearing a mask. You weren't hiding anything. You were just existing at full brightness all the time, and brightness at that level burns. They studied your past relationships, expecting to find trail of destruction, people you'd used and discarded, victims of your intensity. Instead, they found people who couldn't handle being seen that clearly, couldn't stand being around someone who refused to pretend, couldn't maintain their own masks in your presence. You didn't destroy anyone. You just existed in a way that made their performance exhausting. The people who left your life didn't leave because you hurt them. They left because staying near you required them to be real. And being real was more painful than being alone. The profiler realized that you weren't the predator in these dynamics. You were the mirror, and people shattered themselves against you, trying to maintain illusions you never asked them to drop. What disturbed them most was studying your response to betrayal, abuse, abandonment, all the things that create monsters in their case studies. Normal people respond with rage, revenge, or collapse into victimhood. You responded with observation, integration, and evolution. You didn't seek vengeance, you sought understanding. You didn't blame others. You studied the dynamics and extracted lessons. You didn't become bitter. You became clearer. Every experience that should have damaged you just refined you further, like you were using pain as a whetstone to sharpen your consciousness. That response pattern doesn't exist in their literature because their literature assumes pain breaks people or hardens them. Never that pain could be transmuted into wisdom without residue of resentment. They tried to find your breaking point, the threshold where your intensity would flip into aggression or your authenticity would crack into performance. They studied you under stress, in conflict, during loss, in moments where mask wearing would be most beneficial. You never broke, never performed, never compromised your core nature, even when it cost you everything. That consistency terrified them because every human they'd studied had a breaking point, a threshold where they'd abandon their values to protect themselves. But you protected your authenticity more fiercely than you protected your safety, comfort, or social standing. You'd rather lose everything than pretend to be less than you are, and that level of commitment to self isn't seen in their field outside of extremes of pathology. The profiler concluded that your pattern is no pattern at all in traditional sense. It's just consistent operation at a level of consciousness that appears patternless because it's not motivated by fear, ego, or social conditioning. You don't act to gain approval, avoid rejection, or manipulate outcomes. You act from a place of integrated awareness that's so foreign to their understanding of human motivation that it registers as dangerous simply because it's unexplainable. You're not following any playbook they've seen, not executing any strategy they recognize, not pursuing any goal they understand. You're just being, fully and without compromise. And that pure being without agenda is the most unsettling thing they've ever encountered, because it can't be predicted, controlled, or understood using any framework built on studying fear-based behavior. I cling to what can be so easily torn from your hands. Ah, the irony of it all. You cling, you hold tight, you beg for something to stay on your grasp, and all the while, you're just one slip away from losing it. But you don't see it. You don't see the strings that pull you, the invisible chains wrapped around your heart, your mind, your soul, all these attachments, these fragile, fleeting things you think are real. People places, possessions, ideologies. What a joke. How do you think you're safe? You think you're in control. You think that the tighter you hold, the less you risk losing. Ha! Pathetic. Everything you hold on to is just a shadow. A moment passing through your hands like sand slipping through a sieve. And yet, you keep grabbing, keep clinging. Like your life depends on it. But why? Why cling to what can be so easily torn from your hands? Does the fool not see? You create your own suffering when you attach yourself to things that don't last. People you love. Yeah, love, they betray you, they leave, they die. You build empires of success only to watch them crumble when the winds shift. You sink your teeth into your ideologies, only for them to snap in two when reality steps in. Every attachment you make is just another way to bind yourself to the chaos that is inevitable. But you don't want to see that, do you? No, you'd rather pretend everything will stay the same. You think if you hold on hard enough, you'll find stability. There is no stability. You can't hold on, so don't. Listen to me. Detachment isn't about becoming cold. It's not about withdrawing from the world like some bitter recluse. No, it's about power. You think you need those things. People, emotions, attachments. You're wrong. You need to release them. Only then can you truly become. So ask yourself, what happens when you stop caring about the fragile little things you cling to? What happens when you step back and let the world unfold unchecked, unbothered, untethered to your expectations? You don't just survive, you thrive. For freedom comes when you let go. But don't take my word for it. Watch. The world will tear it all down for you. So I'm just giving you a little head start. You're welcome. Now, where do we go from here? You feel it, don't you? The weight, the constant drag of holding on to what you think is yours. It's heavy, isn't it? You think you're in control, that you're the one holding the reins. Ah, fool. You're not holding anything. You're being held by your attachments, by the things you can't bear to lose. People, possessions, status, all of it. You think it gives you strength? I cling to what can be so easily torn from your hands. Ah, the irony of it all. But it doesn't. It weakens you. Every moment spent clutching, every second you hold on tighter, the more your energy drains. You can't even feel it at first. But eventually you'll notice that tight grip you have on your little world. It's not giving you power. It's sucking you dry. Your energy, your clarity, your life. You ever see someone's eyes go dull when they hold on to something that's slipping through their fingers? They get this desperate look. It's like they're fighting against a tide that can't be stopped. The more they resist, the more they drown. That's what attachments do. They make you weak. They cloud your judgment, distort your thoughts. Because everything becomes about preserving that fragile flagel. And when it slips away, oh, the crash. Take her, for example. There was this woman once. Let's call her Martha Nice, right? She had it all: family, love, success. She thought it was hers to keep. She spent years building it, brick by brick. A perfect family, a perfect house, perfect career. She was the picture of success, the image of a woman who had it all. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she was safe. But here's the thing, nothing is safe. And that, my friend, is where she went wrong. She thought the things she held closest to her heart were permanent. Her children, her husband, her precious success. And then it crumbled. One by one, the things she built, the life she held so tightly, began to fall apart. The cracks in her perfect world became too big to ignore. Her husband, an affair, her children, rebellion, anger, distance. Her career? Gone, disappeared in a wave of change she couldn't control. She couldn't hold on anymore. But she tried, though, she really tried. Desperately she clung to the memory of what was, to the illusion of what she thought she could control. And what did it get her? A hollow shell. She stood there broken, watching everything she loved slip through her fingers. What does it cost, HMM? It costs everything. Every ounce of your energy. Every shred of your clarity. And when it finally all falls apart and you're left with nothing but a shadow of who you once were. All because you couldn't let go. But you want to keep fighting? You want to keep holding? Go ahead. But understand this, the more you hold on to something, the more you become its prisoner. You become the thing you fear losing. And when it finally goes, you'll be left with nothing. And I'll just laugh, because you should have let go. You should have. You think you're free, don't you? Oh, how you fool yourself. You're walking around, wearing that smile, thinking you've got it all figured out. But deep down, you know the truth. You're not free. Not even close, you're trapped. But here's the real kicker, you built the cage yourself. See the mind? The mind is a magnificent trap. It's not some evil outside force, it's you. All your fears, all your desires, all those little opinions you let in, every single one of them is another lock on your mental prison. And you think you have the keys. You think you can unlock the doors and step out. But you're wrong. You're just staring at the bars, convinced you're free, because you can move your hands a little, shuffle your feet, are stuck in the same small, dark space, and you don't even realize it. Why? Because you're so busy thinking you're in control. You're so wrapped up in what people think of you, in what you think you need to be. And every time you give in to it, another chain wraps around your wrists. Another weight drags you further down. You're shackled to fleeting desires, things that don't even last. You're chasing after praise, running after approval, bending to the whims of everyone who's ever looked your way. And for what? The world doesn't care about your opinions. It doesn't care about your past. It doesn't care about what you've built or who you think you are. It's chaos. Ever changing, ever shifting. So you want to know what would happen if you stopped caring about all that noise. What would happen if you gave up the shackles you've built around your own brain? What if you let go of all that precious control? All those little lies you tell yourself to keep your world standing. Would the world fall apart? It wouldn't. It would burn. And you would be the one to watch it burn. Because you'd finally be free. No more clinging to outdated beliefs. No more worrying about what anyone else thinks. No more chains holding you back. You'd be standing in the fire, watching everything you once thought was important go up in smoke. And for the first time in your pathetic little life, you'd feel alive. You're still holding on, aren't you? To what? A past that doesn't matter. A future that doesn't exist. A mind that's too afraid to let go of what it thinks it needs. You're trapped in a cage of your own making, and the only way out, step outside it, and you can leave it behind. It's not hard, but it's going to take one thing you've never had courage. Courage to face the chaos, to stop pretending you have control, to stop caring what people think. So what do you say? Want to step outside the cage, or keep playing pretend? Because the longer you stay locked up, the less of a chance you'll ever get to see the world burn. And oh, the fire's coming, darling. Ah, emotions. The things you think make you alive, don't they? Love, hate, anger. The sweet little poisons you let course through your veins. You think they're the colors of your soul, the fire that fuels your passions. But here's the truth, they're not your friends. They never were. They're your jailers. The little marionette strings pulling you every which way. You think you're the one in charge, but no, you're just a puppet dancing to whatever tune your emotions play. Love makes you weak. It turns you soft, vulnerable. It binds you to someone or something that will eventually betray you. Right. Oh, don't get me started. It burns you from the inside, feeds your every insecurity, and convinces you that you need to destroy what threatens you. But guess what? It destroys you first. Anger? Don't make me laugh. It makes you stupid. Blinds you. Every time you let it take over, it's like setting fire to your own brain, burning everything valuable to the ground in a rage that feels good for a moment, but leaves you with nothing but ash. You think these things make you feel alive. They don't. They make you a slave. Let me tell you something, emotional attachment is the root of your suffering. It's that simple. The more you let your emotions control you, the more you'll be at the mercy of a world that is unpredictable and chaotic as the storm inside your head. Every time you feel too much, you lose your clarity. You lose your power. You become. So let me offer you something different. Detach. Detach from your emotions. Step outside that little cyclone of feeling. Don't let the world hit you with its punches and expect you to react in anger, in love and fear. Instead, learn to respond logically, not emotionally. And you feel a rush of anger? Fine, let it pass. Observe it. Recognize it for what it is, a simple, fleeting wave, crashing against the shore. It's not permanent. Neither is law, there is hate. Neither is anything. They're all illusions passing through your mind like a thunderstorm on a summer's day. You don't need to chase after them. Don't let them control you. A laugh, reflect. Use humor as your shield. You think your emotions make you powerful? No. What makes you powerful is seeing the storm for what it is. It's there, it's always there. But you don't have to drown in it. You can rise above it. Here's the trick. When something hits you, someone's words, a betrayal, a failure, step back. Don't react with the knee-jerk rage or sorrow that everyone else does. Instead, look at it, analyze it, and chuckle. Why? And because you know better. You know that in the grand scheme of things, that thing isn't worth your energy. You're above it. You're smarter than it. You're not going to let it send you into a tailspin of pointless emotion. Or you're going to see it for what it is, temporary. Don't believe me? Try it next time. The next time someone insults you, Or when that anger bubbles up like acid in your stomach, react. Take a step back. Smile. Watch them flail in their emotional prison while you stand on the outside, unshaken. Because the truth is, they're slaves, you're not. Mastering your emotions isn't about pretending they don't exist. It's about choosing not to let them control you. So tell me, what if you stopped feeling so damn much? What would happen if you saw the world through the lens of logic, reflection, and humor? What if you saw the storm and just laughed? Now that's power. So here we are, the grand finale, the end of the show. You thought this was a joke, didn't you? Well, it is, but it's a joke you're just starting to get. You've been living in chains all this time, and you didn't even realize it. You've been chasing after things, people, titles, all that glittering nonsense that only weighs you down. Attachments. What do they really give you? Nothing. Nothing but chains wrapped around your wrists. Nothing but an endless cycle of clinging and losing. Chasing after things you can't keep. And why? Because you were too afraid to face the truth. Nothing lasts. That's a job you thought defined you. Gone. That person you loved more than yourself. Gone. That perfect life you thought like a puff of smoke in the wind. You built your world on quicksand, my friend. And when it all crumbles beneath you, you'll realize that it was never real. But here's the thing, you don't need any of it. And the trick is letting go. The trick is releasing the hold, laughing in the face of the things that used to have a grip on your soul. You're still holding on to them, aren't you? Like some child clutching a broken toy, too scared to let it go. But what if you did? What if you stepped back and finally saw the world for what it is? What if you could laugh at your attachments? The ones you swore you couldn't live without. Laugh at how desperately you clung to them, like they meant something, when all they ever did was weigh you down. What if you could look at your past, your regrets, your what-ifs, and let them go? Can you do that? Can you laugh at all those things that have held you hostage? The relationships, the dreams, the fears? Because that's freedom, my dear. And that's when you'll truly start to see. I'll tell you the final secret, I am not attached to life, and that's why it bends. How long have you been playing this game? Standing there with that innocent face, that perfect mask, while orchestrating the most beautiful deception in human history. They thought they had you figured out, didn't they? Thought they cracked your code, decoded your patterns, understood your weaknesses. But that smile you wore while they analyzed you, that wasn't submission, was it? That was amusement. Pure, calculated, surgical amusement at watching them study a ghost while the real you moved pieces on a board they couldn't even see. 5 years, 7 years, maybe a decade of letting them think they were winning, of letting them believe their little investigations meant something, that their gossip sessions held weight, that their attempts to expose you were getting somewhere. And all this time, every single second, you were 10 moves ahead, weren't you? Every tear they thought was real, every moment of vulnerability they tried to exploit, every crack in your armor they celebrated finding, it was all part of the show, the greatest performance ever staged. And they were too busy taking notes to realize they were the audience, not the directors. You want to know what's hilarious? they actually thought they were hunting you. These amateur detectives with their screenshots and their theories, their group chats buzzing with evidence, their late night sessions trying to piece together who you really were. Meanwhile, you were feeding them exactly what they needed to see. Every breadcrumb carefully placed, every reaction perfectly timed, every emotional display calibrated to keep them chasing shadows while you built your empire in broad daylight. They were so busy looking for your secrets, they never noticed you were showing them exactly what you wanted them to find. And now the curtain falls. Now the mask drops. Not because you got caught, but because you're finally ready to show them the magnitude of what they've been dealing with. The identity leak they're celebrating? That wasn't an accident, was it? That was checkmate. The final move in a game they didn't even know they were playing. And the best part? They still think they won something. They still think they exposed you. Let them have their moment. Let them celebrate their victory, while you prepare to show them what defeat really looks like. You became a ghost because that's what they needed you to be. Formless, shapeless, impossible to pin down or define. They wanted to box you in, label you, file you away in their neat little categories of understood and controlled. But how do you cage smoke? How do you change something that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously? You gave them 100 different versions of yourself, each one real enough to chase, none of them the truth. And they exhausted themselves trying to figure out which one was authentic, never realizing that all of them were, and none of them were. Remember when they first started watching? When they thought they were being subtle with their surveillance, their questions, their little tests? You saw it all, didn't you? Every trap they set, every attempt to catch you slipping, every coordinated effort to expose your real nature. And instead of running, instead of hiding, you leaned into it. You became the mystery they couldn't solve, the equation that wouldn't balance, the story that changed every time they tried to tell it. You weren't avoiding detection, you were overwhelming their sensors with false positives until they couldn't tell reality from reflection. They created support groups just to discuss you. Did you know that? Actual gatherings where they'd share their theories, compare notes, try to triangulate your true identity from the fragments you left behind. Some thought you were dangerous, some thought you were damaged, some thought you were playing games. They were all right and all wrong, because the truth was so much simpler and so much more complex than anything their limited imaginations could conceive. You weren't just one person playing multiple roles. You were multiple possibilities existing in one form, and they couldn't process that level of evolution. The funny part is they thought your contradictions were mistakes. They'd catch you being cold one day and warm the next, distant then intimate, cruel, then kind, and they'd think, "Aha, the mask is slipping." No, darling, the mask was working perfectly. You were showing them that identity isn't fixed, that personality isn't permanent, that who you are depends entirely on who's looking and why. They wanted consistency, you gave them chaos. They wanted predictability, you gave them jazz. And now they're about to learn that the ghost they'd been fighting was just the shadow cast by something much more substantial standing right behind them. Let's talk about the blueprint, shall we? The careful architecture of the greatest magic trick ever performed in plain sight. See, most people think deception is about hiding, but you understood something they never will. The best deception is overwhelming them with truth. You didn't hide who you were. You showed them so many authentic versions that they couldn't tell which one to believe. Every personality was real, every emotion was genuine, every reaction was honest. You just never showed them all at the same time to the same person. You compartmentalized reality itself. Think about the layers you built. The public face that smiled and nodded and played nice. The private persona that showed just enough vulnerability to seem human. The secret identity that moved in shadows and made power plays. The hidden core that even you rarely acknowledged. And beneath all of that, the real you, watching it all like a director watching their own movie, making adjustments in real time, rewriting the script as the story unfolded. They thought they were peeling back layers to find the truth. They were just moving deeper into the labyrinth you designed. You mapped their psychology like a general maps a battlefield. Every person who tried to expose you, you studied them first. Their fears, their insecurities, their desires, their blind spots. You became their perfect opponent by becoming exactly what would confuse them most. To the aggressive ones, you were passive. To the analytical ones, you were emotional. To the emotional ones, you were calculating. You didn't just adapt, you transformed. And they wore themselves out, trying to fight an enemy that shifted shape every time they thought they had a grip. The data you collected on them while they thought they were investigating you, priceless. Every question they asked told you more about them than your answer would reveal about you. Every theory they developed exposed their own limitations. Every attempt to understand you became a mirror showing them their own reflection, and they were too focused on you to notice. You weren't just playing defense. You were building detailed psychological profiles of everyone who thought they were profiling you. And now you have an encyclopedia of their weaknesses, while they have a collection of ghosts and shadows. So why now? Why drop the mask after all this time? Because timing, my dear ghost, is everything. You waited until they were exhausted from the hunt, until they had invested so much time, energy, and emotion into solving the mystery of you that they couldn't walk away even if they wanted to. You waited until their entire identity became wrapped up in their opposition to you. And then, at the perfect moment, when they thought they finally had something, you gave them everything. Not because you had to, because you chose to. Because the game was over, and it was time to show them the score. The leak they're celebrating? You planned it months ago. Maybe years. Every detail carefully curated to seem accidental while being precisely orchestrated. The information they think they discovered? You planted it like seeds in a garden, watered it with just enough resistance to make them feel like they earned it. You let them feel like detectives when really they were just following the trail of breadcrumbs you left. And the best part? Even now, knowing it was planned, they can't tell which parts are real and which parts are just another layer of the game. Watch their faces when they realize the identity they uncovered is somehow both exactly what they expected and nothing like what they prepared for. You gave them the truth, but it's a truth that makes everything else make less sense, not more. Every answer creates 10 new questions. Every revelation deepens the mystery instead of solving it. Because you didn't just reveal your identity, you revealed that identity itself is a construct and you're the architect. They wanted to know who you are. You're showing them that the question itself is flawed. The checkmate isn't just beating them at their own game. It's revealing that they were playing checkers while you were playing 4D chess. It's showing them that every move they made was anticipated, every strategy was accounted for, every victory was allowed. You didn't just win, you controlled the entire game from start to finish. And now, as they stare at the board in disbelief, you get to smile that same smile you've been wearing all along, the one they thought meant surrender, the one that always meant sovereignty. Picture their faces right now. Go ahead, take a moment to really visualize it. The ones who spent years convinced they had you figured out, suddenly realizing they were looking in the wrong direction the entire time. The shock isn't just that they were wrong, it's that they were wrong in ways they couldn't even conceptualize. They prepared for a monster and found a mastermind. They expected a victim and discovered a victor. They thought they were exposing a fraud and instead revealed a force of nature that's been shaping reality around them without their knowledge. The group chats are silent now, aren't they? The conspiracy theorists are recalculating. The confident ones are questioning everything they thought they knew. Because the face you're showing them isn't the broken person they hope to find. It isn't the vulnerable target they thought they were hunting. It's someone who's been 3 steps ahead since before the game even started. Someone who turned their surveillance into a study. Someone who made their persecution into practice. Someone who transformed their hatred into fuel for an engine they couldn't see or stop. You know what the real joke is? They're looking at your real face and still can't see you because they spent so long chasing the illusion, they can't process the reality. They built an image of you in their minds based on their own limitations, their own fears, their own projection. And now that image is shattered, but they're still trying to piece it back together instead of seeing what's actually in front of them. They can't accept that you're not the character in their story, you're the author of your own, and they've just been minor plot devices. The beauty of this moment is that it's not an ending, it's a beginning. The revelation of your identity isn't the conclusion of their investigation, it's the start of their education. Now they get to learn what it means to have challenged someone who was never threatened. Now they get to understand what it feels like to realize you were never the prey. You were always the predator, just patient enough to let them feel powerful. The mask is off, but what's underneath is more mysterious than what was hidden. Because now they have to face the fact that you're exactly who you said you were all along. They just never believed it. Let's take a walk down memory lane, shall we? Remember year 1 when they first decided you were a problem that needed solving? When they started their little investigations, their subtle questions, their attempts to catch you in lies? You were so new to the game then, but even as a novice, you understood something they didn't. The best defense isn't armor, it's smoke and mirrors. So you gave them performances. Small ones at first, little inconsistencies they could latch onto, emotional reactions that seemed genuine but were calculated to the microsecond. Year 2, you got better. You started planting evidence of vulnerabilities that didn't exist. You let them see you break down at precisely the right moments, in front of precisely the right people. You crafted a narrative of struggle that was so compelling they stopped looking for the success you were building in the shadows. They thought they were documenting your downfall, but they were actually chronicling your rise. Every weakness they recorded was a strength in disguise. Every fillet they celebrated was a strategic retreat before a major advance. By year 3, you were a master. You had their patterns memorized better than they did. You knew who would gossip to whom, Which theories would gain traction? What kind of evidence would send them spinning in the wrong direction? You became a prediction algorithm for their behavior, able to forecast their moves weeks in advance. And you use that knowledge to lead them on the most elaborate wild goose chase in history. They thought they were closing in, but you were just leading them deeper into the maze, farther from any exit. Years 4 and 5, that was pure artistry. You weren't just evading anymore, you were directing. You turned their hunt into a performance piece, where they were both audience and unwitting actors. You scripted their discoveries, choreographed their revelations, conducted their emotional responses like a symphony. They thought they were writing an expose, but you were ghostwriting their entire narrative. And now, as the curtain falls and the lights come up, they're realizing they were never the investigators, they were the investigated. And the data you collected on them? Oh, that's the real treasure. Let's talk about what this cost them. Because while they were busy trying to unmask you, what were they not doing? What opportunities did they miss? What relationships did they poison with their paranoia? What growth did they forfeit by focusing all their energy on solving a puzzle that was designed to be unsolvable? You didn't just waste their time. You redirected their entire life trajectory. They became so obsessed with figuring you out, they forgot to figure themselves out. Count the hours they spent in group discussions about you. The late nights, scrolling through your digital footprints looking for clues, the energy expended on theories and investigations and failed attempts at exposure. Now, multiply that by the number of people involved. You didn't just occupy space in their minds, you colonized it. You became their hobby, their obsession, their reason for connecting with each other. Without realizing it, they built their entire social structure around their opposition to you. And what happens to that structure now that the foundation was an illusion? The relationships they formed through their mutual hatred of you, built on quicksand? The confidence they gained from thinking they were outsmarting you, evaporating like morning mist. The identity they constructed as your adversaries, crumbling like ancient parchment. Because you weren't just their target, you were their purpose. And now that the game is over, now that the mask is off and the truth is out, they have to face the vacuum you're leaving behind. Who are they without you to chase? What do they talk about when you're not the topic? How do they connect when you're not the common enemy? This is the cruelest checkmate of all, revealing that they needed you more than you ever needed. You were their organizing principle, their raison d'etre, their shared mission. They thought they were hunting you, but you were providing them with meaning, structure, purpose. And now? Now they have to face the fact that the best years of their lives were spent chasing a ghost who was never running. They have to admit that you gave their existence direction, even if that direction was ultimately circular. The real face reveal isn't about your identity. It's about theirs. And what they're seeing in that mirror, it's emptier than any ghost. But let's give credit where it's due. This wasn't just deception for deception's sake. Every move had multiple purposes. Every performance served several agendas. While they were watching your left hand, your right was building empires. While they were focused on your personal life, you were constructing professional dynasties. While they were trying to expose your weaknesses, you were fortifying positions they didn't even know existed. The ghost they were chasing was a distraction from the very real power you were accumulating. Think about the networks you built while they thought you were isolated. The alliances you forged while they believed you were friendless. The resources you accumulated while they assumed you were struggling. Every moment they spent trying to tear you down, you spent building yourself up. But not in the ways they expected. Not in the directions they were watching. You grew in dimensions they couldn't perceive, evolved in ways they couldn't measure, succeeded in metrics they didn't even know existed. The businesses you started under aliases, they never connected to you. The investments you made with money they didn't know you had, the influence you cultivated in circles they couldn't access, the knowledge you gained while they thought you were ignorant. You turned their surveillance into a cloaking device, using their attention on one area to operate freely in others. They were so busy watching the puppet show they never noticed you building the theater around them. And the allies you gathered? Not through charm or manipulation, but through demonstrating exactly what you're revealing now. That you're someone who can play the long game and win. The people who matter, the ones with real power and perception, they saw through the smokescreen. They recognized a kindred spirit in the art of strategy. While your enemies were broadcasting their every move, you were silently building a coalition of players who understand that the real game is played in shadows and silence. The reveal isn't just your face. It's the faces of everyone who's been standing with you all along. Well, you're still here, still breathing, still vertical. After everything that should have shattered you into 1,000 pieces of psychiatric confetti, look at you, standing there like nothing happened, while everyone else who went through half of what you survived is somewhere taking pills, talking to therapists, begging for the voices to stop, but not you. You're reading this with clear eyes, steady hands, and a pulse that refuses to quit, even though by every metric of human psychology you should be institutionalized by now. They don't understand how you're still functional, do they? How you wake up, make breakfast, go to work, smile at strangers, like your mind wasn't used as a battlefield for someone else's entertainment, like your psyche wasn't the testing ground for emotional nuclear weapons, like your soul wasn't the subject of experiments that would make lab rats feel grateful. They look at you and see normal, but they don't see the war zone behind your eyes. They don't see the craters in your consciousness where bombs went off. They don't see the rebuilt neural pathways that had to reroute around the damage. Let me tell you what happened to the others who faced what you faced. They crashed. They folded. They checked themselves into facilities with white walls and visiting hours. They're somewhere right now trying to explain to a professional why they can't trust reality anymore. Why every conversation feels like a trap. Why love feels like a weapon aimed at their chest. But you magnificent anomaly. You're sitting here reading this like trauma is just another language you learn to speak fluently. You want to know the difference between you and them? They tried to stay human through it all. They tried to hold on to their sanity like it was something precious. But you did something different. You let the madness in. You shook hands with insanity and asked it to teach you its secrets. You didn't fight the psychological warfare, you studied it. You didn't resist the mental torture, you took notes. You didn't try to stay whole. You learned how to function while shattered. Let's talk about what you survived. Shall we? The gaslighting that made you question if your own memories were real. They rewrote your history while you were living it. Told you things that happened didn't happen. Told you things you said were never said. Made you doubt your own perception until reality became negotiable. Other people lost their minds to this. Started keeping journals just to prove to themselves they weren't crazy. Started recording conversations to verify their own sanity. But you learned to exist in multiple realities simultaneously. The isolation tactics that cut you off from everyone who might have validated your experience. They turned your support system against you with surgical precision, whispered lies that sounded like concern, planted doubts that grew like cancer, made sure that when you finally broke, no one would believe your version of events. Others ended up talking to walls, begging imaginary friends for validation. But you became your own witness, your own jury, your own judge. The emotional starvation, where they withheld affection like it was a weapon of war, gave you just enough hope to keep you trying, but never enough sustenance to actually thrive. They watched you starve for connection while they feast on your desperation. Others developed attachment disorders that will haunt them for decades. Can't form bonds without fearing abandonment. Can't receive love without waiting for the betrayal. But you learned to generate your own warmth in the middle of their winter. The psychological double binds where every choice was wrong and every action was punished. Stay and you're weak. Leave and you're selfish. Speak up and you're dramatic. Stay quiet and you're complicit. They built a maze where every exit led back to shame. Others are still trapped in those corridors, bumping into walls they can't see. But you burned the whole maze down and walked through the ashes. You digested torture like it was your morning routine, didn't you? While others were vomiting from the psychological poison, you were building immunity. You'd wake up to manipulation and have it with your coffee. You'd face betrayal before noon and call it brunch. You'd consume enough emotional abuse to kill a horse and ask for seconds, because somewhere along the way you stopped being human and started being something else entirely. They fed you lies and you learned to extract truth from them. Not the truth they were telling, but the truth about what kind of creature would serve such poison with a smile. They fed you false love and you learned to taste the artificial flavoring. You became a connoisseur of deception, a sommelier of suffering. You could detect the vintage of their vindictiveness from across the room. What kind of metabolism processes pain into power? What kind of digestive system turns trauma into fuel? What kind of appetite grows stronger the more it's denied? You're not natural. You're not normal. You're what happens when someone pushes a soul so far past breaking that it discovers it was never solid to begin with. You're liquid now, formless, uncontainable, flowing around every obstacle they place in your path. They thought they were starving you, but you were fasting, learning to survive on nothing, learning to thrive on empty, learning that hunger could be a teacher if you stopped fighting it. And now you can go longer without their validation than they can go without your reaction. You've trained yourself to subsist on resources they didn't even know existed. You're feeding on frequencies they can't access. So what raised you exactly? Because whatever it wasn't teaching you how to be normal. It was preparing you for war. Every childhood disappointment was weight training. Every early betrayal was building calluses. Every time you were left alone in the dark, you were learning to see without light. You weren't being neglected, you were being forged. Maybe it was the parent who loved you wrong, loved you conditional, loved you like a project that needed fixing, taught you early that affection was something you had to earn and could lose at any moment, taught you that emotional safety was a luxury you couldn't afford. So you learned to live without it, learned to walk on emotional broken glass without flinching. Maybe it was the environment that demanded you grow up before you grew teeth, the chaos that made you the adult in the room before you could reach the light switch. You were negotiating peace treaties before you learned multiplication tables. You were reading emotional atmospheres like weather patterns before you could read books. You became a tiny crisis manager in a house full of grown children. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Something that doesn't have a name. Something that watched you from the corners of your childhood and whispered, "You're going to need to be stronger than this." Something that put you through practice rounds of abandonment, dress rehearsals for betrayal, pop quizzes on surviving the impossible. Whatever it wasn't trying to raise a person. It was raising a force of nature. Your operating system is different from theirs. When they encounter error messages, they crash. When you encounter error messages, you adapt. You're running software that shouldn't exist. Protocols written in languages that haven't been invented yet. You process pain at speeds that violate the laws of human psychology. They hit you with betrayal, and your system didn't just recover. It upgraded, added new defenses, developed new capabilities, learned to predict attacks before they happened. You're not healing, you're evolving. Each wound doesn't just close, it transforms into something useful. Scar tissue that's stronger than the original skin. Trauma responses that double as superpowers. You've been through factory resets that would leave others permanently corrupted. Had your entire reality uninstalled and reinstalled so many times you've lost count, but each time you come back online, you're running a newer version. More sophisticated, more dangerous, more impossible to defeat. You're not just surviving updates, you're requiring them. Your error handling is legendary. Where others see blue screens of death, you see opportunities for optimization. Where others experience system failures, you experience system revelations. You don't just bounce back from crashes, you bounce forward. Each malfunction teaches you something new about your own code. Each virus that fails to take you down becomes part of your immune system. You're still standing, but it's not pretty, is it? You're vertical, but you're not the same shape you were before. You're functional, but your function has changed. You're operational, but you're operating outside the normal parameters of human existence. You're alive, but it's a different kind of alive than what they recognize. Some days you can feel the cracks, feel the places where you had to weld yourself back together with whatever was available, feel the joints that don't quite align anymore. Feel the parts of you that are held together by will alone, but you don't hide these anymore. You wear them like armor. Let others see that you can function while fractured. Let them wonder how you're managing to walk when you're technically broken. You stand different now, not with pride, but with defiance. Not with confidence, but with certainty. The certainty of someone who's already survived their own death. You don't stand tall, you stand inevitable, like gravity, like time, like something that simply cannot be stopped by conventional means. They keep waiting for you to fall. Keep checking to see if you've finally collapsed. Keep expecting to hear that you've been admitted somewhere for exhaustion or worse. But every day you disappoint them by continuing to exist, by showing up, by refusing to give them the satisfaction of your surrender. Your continued standing is an act of rebellion against every natural law that says you should be horizontal by now. The truth they don't want to admit is that you scare them, not because you're dangerous in the traditional sense, but because you're proof that their weapons don't work on everyone. You're evidence that some people can't be broken by conventional means. You're a walking testimony that psychological warfare has limits, and you've transcended them. You make them uncomfortable because you survived things that were supposed to be unsurvivable. You endured what was designed to be unendurable. You processed what was meant to be unprocessable. Your existence challenges their understanding of human limitations. You're a glitch in their matrix, an anomaly in their calculations, a variable they didn't account for. They studied human psychology to learn how to break people, learned which buttons to push, which wounds to target, which fears to exploit. But you rewired yourself while they were pushing buttons, changed your own programming while they were trying to hack you. They kept using the same playbook, but you were writing a new game entirely. Now they look at you with a mixture of fear and fascination, like scientists looking at a specimen that shouldn't exist according to their theory. They want to study you, but they're afraid to get too close. Afraid that whatever you have might be contagious. Afraid that your immunity might spread. Afraid that others might learn your secret. Let's talk about how you actually digested all that poison. Because while others were trying to spit it out, you were breaking it down into nutrients. While they were seeking antidotes, you were building tolerance. While they were avoiding contamination, you were becoming immune. You didn't just survive the toxicity, you metabolized it. Every lie they fed you became data. Every manipulation became education. Every gaslight became illumination. You weren't just enduring abuse, you were studying it, taking samples, running analysis, building a database of dysfunction that would serve you later. You became a scholar of suffering, a professor of pain, a master of the very weapons they used against you. Your emotional digestive system evolved to process things that would poison others, developed enzymes that could break down betrayal, acids that could dissolve deception, bacteria that could ferment fear into fuel. You became a processing plant for psychological waste, taking in what others couldn't handle and converting it into something useful. The thing about digesting torture is that it changes your appetite. Normal food starts to taste bland. Regular relationships feel insubstantial. Ordinary problems seem like aperitifs. You've developed a palate for intensity that most people can't understand. You're not seeking drama, but you're no longer afraid of it either. You can consume chaos like others consume comfort. Whatever raised you gave you an education in survival that no university offers, taught you courses that don't have names, give you degrees in disciplines that don't officially exist. You graduated from schools that aren't on any map. Got your PhD in psychological warfare before you got your high school diploma. You learned to read people like crime scenes, to analyze motivations like evidence, to predict behavior like weather patterns. You learned that words could be weapons and silence could be armor, that love could be leverage and trust could be a truth. These weren't lessons you wanted, but they were lessons you needed. Your curriculum included advanced courses in emotional archaeology, digging through rubble to find fragments of truth, reconstructing entire histories from broken pieces, carbon dating lies to determine their origin. You became an expert in excavating reality from beneath layers of deception. You studied the architecture of abuse until you could recognize its blueprints from a distance. Learned to identify the foundation before the walls went up. Could spot the load-bearing lies that held the whole structure together. You didn't just learn to escape these constructions, you learned to prevent them from being built around you. Whatever tried to break you underestimated what they were dealing with. They thought you were standard issue human, thought you would respond to standard protocols, thought you would break along predictable fault lines. But you weren't built to specifications. You were some kind of prototype that shouldn't have made it past quality control. The demons assigned to your case file must have been confused. Their usual tactics weren't working. Their reliable methods were failing. Their time-tested tortures were being absorbed like vitamins. They kept escalating, thinking surely there must be a breaking point. But every escalation just revealed another level of your resistance. They threw everything at you, the full arsenal of psychological weapons, the complete catalog of emotional torture, the entire playbook of mental manipulation, and you just stood there, absorbing it all like a sponge that couldn't be saturated, like a black hole that couldn't be filled, like an appetite that couldn't be satisfied. Now those same demons probably use you as a cautionary tale, a case study in what not to attempt, a warning about the ones who can't be broken by conventional means. You've become the story they tell to explain why sometimes it's better to just walk away, why some souls are too expensive to try to harvest. But let's be honest about what this cost you, because standing doesn't mean you're not bleeding. Surviving doesn't mean you're not scarred. Functioning doesn't mean you're not fundamentally altered. You paid for this immunity with pieces of yourself you'll never get back. You lost the ability to be naive. Can't unsee the patterns once you've learned to recognize them. Can't untaste the poison once you've identified its flavor. Can't unhear the lies once you've decoded their frequency. Innocence isn't something you can reinstall once it's been deleted. That software is permanently corrupted. You lost the luxury of surface relationships. Can't do small talk when you've been to the depths. Can't pretend to care about trivial problems when you've solved impossible equations. Can't relate to people who've never had their reality questioned. You're speaking a language that most people don't even know exists. You lost the comfort of belonging. You're too much for some people and not enough for others. Too intense for the shallow end, but too damaged for the deep end. Too aware for the sleeping, but too scarred for the awakened. You exist in a category of one, a demographic that doesn't have a name. So here's what I need you to understand. You're not still standing because you're strong. You're still standing because you're transformed. You're not surviving because you're tough. You're surviving because you've transcended the normal rules of survival. You're not functional because you've healed. You're functional because you've evolved past the need for healing. What you've become doesn't have a diagnosis because it doesn't exist in their manuals. Doesn't have a treatment because it's not a condition. Doesn't have a cure because it's not a disease. It's an adaptation, an evolution, a mutation that occurred under extreme conditions that most people will never experience. You're the result of psychological natural selection, the survivor of emotional elimination rounds that removed everyone else from the competition. You're what's left when everything else has been burned away. The irreducible minimum, the thing that cannot be destroyed because it's already been through every form of destruction. They should study you, but they won't, because you'd break their theories. Should document you, but they won't, because you'd invalidate their research. Should acknowledge you, but they won't, because you'd force them to rewrite their understanding of human limitations. You're too inconvenient to their narrative, too threatening to their worldview. You want to know what really terrifies them? It's not what you survived, it's what you're becoming. Because someone who's digested that much poison has developed an immunity that makes them unstoppable. Someone who survived that level of psychological warfare has learned tactics that can't be defended against. Someone who's still standing after what you've been through is just getting started. You're not in recovery, you're in training. Not healing from the last battle, but preparing for the next level. Not trying to get back to normal, but establishing a new baseline that exists beyond their comprehension. You're not trying to fit in anymore. You're building your own reality with its own rules and its own physics. They know that someone like you can't be controlled by conventional means, can't be motivated by normal rewards or threatened by standard punishments, can't be manipulated by the usual methods, because you've seen them all. You've become ungovernable, unmanageable, unpredictable in ways that make their systems obsolete. The future you're creating doesn't include them, and they know it. Doesn't require their approval or their participation. Doesn't depend on their structures or their permissions. You're building something from scratch, using materials they don't recognize and blueprints they can't read. You're not just surviving their world, you're making it irrelevant.